Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Tonight, we're going to be diving into the latest controversies, or really non controversies, depending on your perspective, in this week in evangelicalism. That is the Skillet O Come Emmanuel song, where they did a metal cover of it. And then was it Dr. David Wood, who's an apologist. And he has a confession to make and made it. And people are freaking out about it. And a lot of articles have been written. So I've yet to write an article on it, but I guess I wanted to do it in line with a video, which is kind of how we've been doing a lot of articles lately anyway. So big topics to discuss tonight, or at least popular topics to discuss tonight. We'll see how much. Yeah, I think the skill thing may not be a big story a week from now, but it is something that people are raging about on social media, and maybe I guess we can just dive in. So, but anyway, how are you doing tonight?
Doing well. It's been a good week, and yeah, I mean the Skillet thing is kind of ridiculous, but it's a little fun. I don't know. I guess it's a topic du jour after a lot of blackpilling last week, so I guess I'll take it.
We like to have fun around here, and it's definitely been a interesting news cycle because you mentioned last week a lot of blackpilling or whatever, but I'm looking at the stories from last week. 50-year mortgages, Owen Strand being effeminate. That's not really a black pill.
No, just a lot of
We
it
did
with
the live stream on Bryce Crawford, which I thought was actually kind of a red pill in a
Well,
way.
I'm more referring to the administration and their messaging, but overall, I mean, I did do the JD Vance versus Ben Shapiro article on which was almost like damage control from a narrative standpoint.
Yeah, it is. So there's definitely a lot going on, but maybe we'll dive into some of the more trivial, niche evangelical news topics of the week. So starting out with Skillet. Skillet. Fun fact: I have seen Skillet in concert. It was like 7, 8 years ago, maybe 8, 9 years ago. Saw them in concert when they came to Silver Spring, Maryland, and they're pretty good in concert. They got a very devoted fan base that shows up. They got this one guy that shows up like 50. I think at the time it was 53 concerts here, something like that he had went to. So they got some people that are very devoted fans. Um, they were very talented. I think the act before them was just not. What was the act before them very bad? It might have been that. It was like, okay, so I hope they don't go on tour with these guys again. I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was. I don't think it was Starset, but Starset is trash live. If you've
No,
ever
I
seen
think
that.
we saw that at a concert we went to, but I could be wrong.
No, I saw Starset when they opened up for a different band. I think it was Red Sun Rising when I saw them open up. But I remember like the band that opened up for Skillet was terrible. Unless they had three bands, and it was just a middle band that was terrible. But I've been to a lot of concerts back in the day. And Skillet was one of the bands. I mean, they put on a good show. Nothing to hate about that. I don't actually hate their music. I think a lot of people hate their music to be edgy and, be pretentious. It's kind of like when people hated Creed back in the day. But now you look at Creed's music, and I think the reason why people hated Creed was because they were vaguely religious. Like there's some Christian themes in their songs, and that was like the height of new atheism or whatever. So people hated Creed because of that, even though their music's not that bad. I would also say Nickelback is not nearly as bad as the internet would have
I
you
mean,
think.
I don't know
If you want to look at,
The Nickelback debate. If I was to say, I mean, a lot of their
I
songs
get it, it's
are more
mass
radio
marketed.
friendly, but
Yeah,
also
it's
that some of their lyrics are just straight up trash
okay.
and very incoherent. Let's just say.
Well, I'm just saying, like, of all the things for the internet to hate, Fallout Boy would be more worthy. Imagine Dragons,
Yeah.
very overrated, very trash. You have one good song, maybe one okay song, the rest just sucks. Uh, so stuff like that. Yes, Nickelback does have some bangers, and so does Skillet. So a lot of people hate on Skillet because you're not making because they try to use the line from Hank Hill. King of the Hill. You're not making Christianity better. You're just making rock and roll worse.
And
Like no,
that's not a
Nickelback
true
or
that's
not
not a
Nickelback.
true case you can say about Skillet, because they
It's not.
actually are a Christian band that you can actually objectively say they've technically made it. I mean, yeah,
Yes.
they're not Metallica, they're not like some major band, but they are certainly like they could be a band that would perform before Metallica. That's kind of where they are in the
Yes,
hierarchy.
they do. They can do metal festivals,
Yes.
and they're not the only Christian band that can do metal
I mean,
festivals, but they can.
there's really two major Christian bands that have like really cracked it as far as they'll get radio play on like secular stations, and that would be Skillet, and the other one would be Demon Hunters. And
Really,
Demon Hunters is more of a
I'm less
metal
familiar
band.
with them.
Yeah, I mean they're more metal, but I mean
So,
they've been around for a while. I mean their music's all right. I like it, but
and John Cooper. Another thing to note about Skillet is John Cooper is actually one of the actual. I mean, he's a not a bassist as far as I know, but he is based. And as far as Christian music artists go, he's one of the real ones. There are not many Christian music artists that are real. They're
and
mostly all fake.
and generally the
Amy
fake
Grant is
ones
fake.
and generally the fake ones are within the Christian niche. Like they don't crack it into a secular audience at all.
So, Amy Grant kind of did, but again, fake.
Well, Lauren Daigle kind of did too, but I'm talking about like
Also fake.
actual bands.
Right. So, I mean, but here's the thing. They came out with a metal version of O Come, Emmanuel, which, by the way, they're not the first person to do a cover of that song that is stylized, right? Like, by no means. You can find another version, like another, people love doing covers of O Come, Emmanuel and stylizing the crap out of it. They actually, started shredding it with guitars, and I love it. So I will come out that, it's not white boy summer, but that is white boy winter energy that we need. And I'll come out as a defender of the cover. Again, I like Skillet's music. I think that cover was good. Another thing that needs to be said. It's hard to find good Christmas music out there. I just gotta say, but I am feeling jolly. I will say this. I am feeling jolly. My Christmas lights are up on my house. They've been up for like a week and a half or something like that. So we are feeling jolly up in here, which is also why I wanted to talk about this night. We're feeling jolly, and in the spirit of feeling jolly, I like the Skillet cover. It is very hard to find good Christmas music, and because I'm a little picky. Part of why I'm picky is like they don't do. It's very hard to find versions of Christmas hymns, Christmas carols, the classics, where they do all of the verses. Like "Hark the Herald Angel Sings." I want to see all of the verses sung, not just 3 or 2 of the verses sung. Like I'm picky in that way. So someone can make a lot of money doing an album of singing Christmas carols the way that they were written. In their original form. And I think they can make a lot of money that because it would actually stand out from the plethora of Christmas music out there. So initially, I'm a fan of it. Now, people want to nuance like, oh, if you can't sing it in church, then it shouldn't be done. But that's just kind of a stupid objection.
Look, I
Not
mean,
all music is meant to be sung in corporate worship.
look, I mean, it's not like it's the Church at the Glades that's doing like a metal version of "O Come, Emmanuel." It's literally a band that's actually made it. It's not Church at the Glades. It's not Life Church. It's not some of these churches that do church at the movies. This is an actual band.
Yes,
Like
it's their job.
no one would be complaining if it was if it was like Slash doing it or something. Like no one would complain.
Right. But because, and here's the other thing that needs to be brought up. John Cooper and Skillet kind of operate in the reformed evangelical niche, do they not?
He certainly swam in the waters.
And that niche is a crab pot. They do not like people breaking out of the niche. Now, again, Skillets, they were outside of the niche this entire time, but they swim in the waters, and then the crabs want to bring them into the pot and control them. They don't want them to have broader reach. That is how it works. And you know that's how it works because how do they treat people, particularly good guys, that try to break out of that niche, that try to break that mold? They attack them for it nonstop. I mean, look at how they treat Joel Webben. And I get that he has some flaws, but let's be real. He's not the problem. He's not the bad guy in this situation. Even Doug Wilson. They went after Doug Wilson for years. And now that Doug Wilson's really made it as far as outside of the Reformed evangelical niche, they're really going after him. Kevin DeYoung and all the effeminates at the Gospel Coalition, stuff like that, really going after him. So that I think is sort of what's behind this, because honestly, I'm kind of surprised. Like, has Skillet never done any Christmas music? Like, I know Third Day has. Like, Third Day has some pretty good Christmas music. But has Skillet never done a cover or something like this? Is this like their first time? Are they doing this for the first time? That it has to be made a big deal by... actually, it wasn't just Reformed people, but there's also some fundies like IFB types. And I'm not being disparaging towards entire faith groups right now, but IFB types didn't like it as well. I know there was one popular account that's very big into the flat Earth conspiracy things. I think his name's Paul. He was like attacking Skillet for it, and the guitarist from Skillet, was ratioing him for it. So there's people trying to like hate on this. There's people trying to nuance like, oh, well, hating on the fact that, they have to make a point that this shouldn't be sung in church. Like, what is the argument they're trying to make?
I'm sure they might agree with that. Like,
Skillet, like, doing it in churches? Are they making it for churches? Now, here's what shouldn't be sung in church. I'm going to give a hot take. Keep Chris Tomlin out of Christmas. Joy, Unspeakable Joy is a bastardization of Joy to the World. Let's actually talk about that for a second. Because Joy to the World is a heraldic song. It is a heraldic song celebrating that Christ has established his kingdom. So it's heraldic. And then in John Piper-like fashion, Chris Tomlin decides to, say joy, unspeakable joy, and focusing on the feeling of the moment rather than on the meaning of the moment, which is what the 4 verses of, I think it's 4 verses in Joy to the World, but which talk about Christ ruling. The song is not about our feelings. The song is about Christ ruling. So keep Chris Tomlin out of Christmas. There. But, good luck, telling a lot of these same Reformed evangelicals that. I mean, I'm sure a lot of them do agree with that, but I'm just saying. That's a bone to pick because Chris Tomlin does intentionally make music for worship, and then he bastardizes Christmas carols. And maybe that's the only one he's bastardized.
No, I'm sure the contemporary music scene has done it to all of them.
But do you know why they do it?
Copyright.
Intellectual property, which, as Christians, is that really a thing? Is intellectual property really a thing?
I mean, I don't think you should be able to, copyright music because you added a verse to it or a chorus
yes.
to it.
Yeah, the definition of transformative needs to be it needs to be sorted out. But YouTube has failed to sort that out after all these years.
You also shouldn't be able to copyright a Bible, but that's also like a Bible translation because you change 25% of the words or whatever. But no, you don't own God's word.
Now, say that someone translates a Bible using a Septuagint. I think they should get a copyright on that.
No.
No.
And I'm sure you can do that, pro bono, or the Septuagint translations have already been made, so you just use those. They're probably
No, there's
better
really
anyway.
just one. There's only like one translation, and it's like really old.
Well,
Like it could use a modern NASib
KJV.
95.
No,
It NASib 95 version. Like it could go for. So I don't know. You have any other thoughts about Skillet?
no, let's. We're gonna play it, right?
Uh, it's YouTube. It doesn't really bode well for playing. Does it? Like, am I wrong?
I mean, it's 10 seconds, right?
Which 10
It,
seconds are you asking for?
how long is the clip? I mean, because again, I mean, technically they don't own the music rights. It's
You'd
public
be surprised.
domain.
It's YouTube though.
Yeah.
It is YouTube. They are the worst about understanding copyright when it comes to music because they auto flag it. And the other thing is, since we're live, they will shut down a live stream over copyrighted content, even if the live stream itself is transformative in use. It's a very rigged system. And the whole system of YouTube is rigged in favor of musicians in a way, or at least the people who manage the channels of musicians, because they have special rules for what they can do that the political commentators, the evangelical channels do not have to, or they get a different set of rules. But music videos, they can do all sorts of content that they get a special set of rules for what allows them to still retain monetization and all that other stuff. So, uh, but it's an Okama Manuel, and they do a lot of heavy guitars and a metal version of that, right? Anything you wanted to add to that?
No. I
Art
mean,
style.
let me just point out that like everyone likes it when like Trans-Siberian Orchestra does it, and they do like Carol to the Bells. They do multiple Christmas songs too, and they're actually part of the band Sabotage, and that's like their side project, I guess. And everyone likes it when they do like Carol to the Bells with like guitars and stuff.
But it has no lyrics, so I don't really like it as
Well, I mean, they
much.
have other songs too, but
I'm just saying, like, you do Carol the Bells without the lyrics, it kind of loses its meaning. That's just my opinion. That's why I'm not really as much of a fan. Uh,
but
but
I don't know if they omit lyrics or not, but
I just think this is a ridiculous
yeah.
controversy
I mean,
that
they
people
are
have tried to make up.
like it's not a controversy for any other like when any sort of secular band does it. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point to have made. So let's dive into the story of David Wood. Now that we've kind of gotten our teaser story, David Wood. So David Wood is a popular apologist. Let me pull him up. He has 384,000 subs, and he does a lot of anti-Islam content. I know he's a little bit cringy on the Israel question and all that other stuff, but he does a lot of debates against Islam. He does some good content, I would say. And he did a recent debate where he got into some hot water because he admitted to multiple crimes. One of them being statutory of the grape variety. So I thought that this was interesting to hear him kind of you admit that in a debate. I don't know how public it was, but it was obviously not too public uh, because some people knew and they wanted to use that against him. And I think the whole story is here. He just came out in front of that and basically said, "Yeah, I've done these things," to kind of prove that the basically the whole point that he's making is that Muhammad is a PDF file. So uh, I think it was a ballsy strategy in the middle of a debate. I don't know if you have any impression of David Wood.
No,
I know you're.
I've really never heard of him before this whole thing. I mean, yeah, I did learn he was a little cringy on the Zionist question. Obviously, I knew he was in apologetics. I've generally complained a lot about apologists in recent, or certainly in recent years, because they're very weak on like various issues, particularly egalitarianism and anything like that, because they want to appeal to the world so much that they're willing to compromise the tenets of historic Christian thought to make an appeal. And there's the question of what does the event in the 1940s have to do with creation, as the great Thomas Accord asked. So again, I'm not familiar with whether he's one of the cringy apologetics guys or if he's just like okay, like a Huff.
Kind of an interesting comment. David Wood banned me because I asked him why his friend apostate prophet was calling Blair White a her. Yeah, again, that's a good question.
I guess he's not that good. He's not on the good side.
I don't know. I wish I got. I'm not as into apologetics either. It's just not my cup of tea. I'm not into the Christian versus Muslim debates. I'm not into the Christian versus atheist debates. I've seen God's Not Dead. It's not for me. So this was a crazy move to pull in a debate. So let's kind of dive in. If I could. Okay.
Out on bond, I had sex with a 13-year-old girl and a 15-year-old girl.
Hey, I even mentioned I would give Dawa guys some information. Hey, so before I went to prison, before I went to jail. So I was in jail and then I got out. While I was out on bond, before I went back to jail and then went to prison. Dawa guys, here's your stuff. The last 2 girls I had sex with before I went to jail. One,
dude,
what? I don't care. One was 13 and one was 15.
I pointed out that the girls were fully grown.
One was 13 and one was 15. So when Muhammad Hijab's like, oh, what if girl's 13, but she got wide hips? That was the case. She had big boobs and wide hips, but she was 13. I did not care. I didn't care back then.
But I said that it was still evil, because even though they were post-pubescent, those girls were still way too young.
In the minds of the Dawa guys, if you ever did anything, you can never condemn it because you did it once, and you can never take the opposite side. So I had sex with a 13-year-old girl. Now, she flung herself at me, so I guess I can defend it. No, I don't defend it. Shouldn't have done it. Doesn't matter if a 13-year-old girl flings herself at you. It doesn't matter if she has big boobs and wide hips and so on. You don't do that sort of thing.
And how did our Muslim friends react? David Wood recently admitted to graping 2 underage girls. Raping? I did nothing against their will. Those girls approached me. But it's statutory rape, right? Why? Because girls that young can't consent. So, according to Daniel Hakikachu, statutory grape can simply be called grape. Daniel, I accept your usage of the word grape. Let's just call it rape. Let's make it official. From here on, any adult who has sex with a girl too young to consent is guilty of rape and can appropriately be called a rapist. No, Daniel, you never get to take this back, and it's going to be hilarious to see you try. Daniel continues, and forcibly sodomizing them. I didn't forcibly do anything. I said that with minors, they upgrade charges to factor in the lack of consent. So they would have upgraded any charge to something like forcible. But it sounds like Daniel agrees that because minors can't consent, anything done to them can be described as forcible. Once again, I accept Daniel's usage of the word. From now on, any adult who has sex with a girl too young to consent shall have his actions labeled as forcible. You guys see where I'm going with this, right? Trust me, you don't. Again, this goes way beyond the obvious, as you'll soon see. Daniel continues, he hid this from his audience for decades. I hid it because I never mentioned it, and only revealed it after others threatened to go public. Liar. How would anyone threaten to go public when no one knew it happened until I said it? I think we can see why Daniel's fellow Muslims say this about him.
So let's kind of take a pause right there. So, yeah, he used that in a debate. I don't know how many people watched that debate, but bold strategy, Cotton. Did you think it worked out for him? Because ultimately he's going to make the point that he's going to make a point against Muhammad here, which he says is not obvious, but I think is kind of glaring because that was the whole part of the debate was, Muhammad marrying a 9-year-old.
I mean, Muhammad went a little bit below the age of 13. Again, I mean, I do, in general, I do just kind of reject the whole framing that, consent is the moral standard. The biblical standard is actually force, not consent. So, I mean, yeah, that the law declares something to be does not necessarily mean it actually is according to the Bible.
That is true, but there is a necessary, this is where, a second degree actually matters. What he was talking about, I believe, is fourth degree.
Well,
So what he committed was like fourth degree, but we're talking about second degree, where it's like in order to have done the act with this person, you forced it because they weren't knowing of this. And usually I think that cutoff is usually 12 years old. So he went on the low end of what would still be considered statutory.
I mean, it's a pretty, I don't want to say strange situation, because it's like, oh, you're about to, go into the pen for a long period of time. So, and I guess in your hedonistic mind, you're, trying to get a little before you're locked away with the big boys for a while.
Like, that's not actually the story, though. So what's kind of interesting about the story is that
because he's out on bail. Like,
he's
you
out- yeah,
think
he's
the
out on
reason
bail.
he's out on bail is a little bit more important than what he did in between his, I guess, trial date.
Right. So, I mean, we're going to kind of skip ahead a little bit because the story is actually much bigger than that. And to be honest, like what he did, what he confessed to is actually like the least of his crimes, in my opinion. Like that's the funny part. So he's like on airing his dirty laundry, his secret sins. It might be the most socially unacceptable of the things that he did as far as crimes go, but as far as the most evil, it's actually not the most evil thing that he did. What he did with, is a sin called fornication, which very bad, but why is he on bail, out on bail doing this, as you mentioned?
Know about any of the horrible things I've done and why these Dawa guys are completely, utterly, totally insane for running their mouths. As many of you know, I attacked my father with a ball-peen hammer early Thanksgiving morning in 1994. As I explained recently on Pints with Aquinas, this was the final step in a bizarre purification ritual.
I eventually attacked my dad with a hammer. I hit him in the head 7 or 8 times with a hammer. I thought he was dead. I left him for dead.
Did you have a reason for doing that? Was he mean to you, or?
He had been mean to. There was no reason. It was not, oh, I'm really mad at you or something like that. It was, it was, I mean, I can describe it. It was like every time I was following a rule, even if it was just like required, like if David, here's what you have to do, I felt like I was somehow polluted, like something had been added to my pure awesomeness and you had added something to me. And so I had this inclination to just, whatever you're trying to make me do, like do the opposite. And I would get this feeling of freedom whenever I do the opposite. So it's a rule, you can't do this. You can't break into a store, you can't do this, you can't steal that stuff. And every time I did, it felt good. Like, oh, here's the real me. But you have to keep upping the game, right? And so eventually it's I'll kill my own dad, and then that's going to be like the real me. Then I'm pure. I'm done with it. What else can I do after that? And so I attacked him with a hammer, left him for dead.
Didn't feel anything. Didn't feel any remorse or any.
No,
just excitement, maybe.
No, it was. I mean, I thought there was going to be some awesome feeling of the ultimate freedom and stuff like that, but it was just, there was just no feeling. There was no good or bad feeling.
There was an absence of feeling. I can't think of an English word that accurately describes what a complete lack of feeling is like. Numb, empty, some sort of void. They don't quite cut it. But if someone were to write a story about me during that time, it would seem weird to me to use the personal pronoun he. The correct pronoun would be it. There was an absence of a person where a person should be. So I left my dad for dead, or maybe it left its dad for dead. Got in my truck and I drove from Virginia to West Virginia. About 70 or 80 or 90 miles from Morgantown, where I was heading, my truck broke down, so I started hitchhiking. A guy picked me up and drove me maybe 20 miles to a gas station, but while he was driving me, I was thinking, do I just beat the crap out of this guy and take his car, or do I kill him? You know what saved this dude? He started giving me signals that he was reading my mind. He knew what I just did to my dad, and he was part of whatever experiment I was in. Back then, when I thought you were reading my mind, that's when you were safest around me, because if I wanted to kill you, I would start thinking, but maybe that's what they're trying to get me to do. And then I wouldn't do anything, because if that's what you're trying to get me to do for your experiment, I didn't want to do it. So this guy drops me off. I try calling my family from the gas station. No one answers. I decide to hitchhike. No one picks me up for like the next 30 or 40 miles. I walked from morning to night, and it was cold, and I wasn't dressed for the cold. My face swelled up, my calves turned into knots, but there was something perfect about it. Seemed like I was at war with the entire universe, and the universe was attacking me with cold, trying to break me. So I kept walking. I started throwing rocks at cars when they didn't stop, hoping that someone would jump out of a car and do something so I could take his car. Turns out it's hard to hit a car that just blew by you going 70. Nighttime, I find a trailer by Cooper's Rock. I walk into the trailer, no one's there. But I call my family, someone finally answers, and my uncle comes and picks me up. The next day, my mom takes me to Chestnut Ridge Psychiatric Hospital. In this mental hospital, I keep going back and forth between thinking these doctors and staff are normal and thinking that I'm part of an experiment and that they're all in on it. There was a window in my room, and I kept thinking that it was digital. It was really a screen, and the outside wasn't real. Keep in mind, I'd been on the other side of that window when my mom brought me there, but it seemed fake. So I wanted to break the window with a chair, but then I would think, maybe that's what they're trying to get me to do. And I wouldn't do it. One day, this doctor walks into my room and says, "David, have you ever been watching a show or listening to a song and thought that it was speaking directly to you?" Yes, lots of times. But how did he know that? How is that dude not reading my mind? Anyway, they keep me there until Virginia puts out an arrest warrant, and they move me to a jail in West Virginia and then to a jail in Virginia. In Virginia, they bring me to my arraignment, but the dumb prosecutor didn't have the paperwork yet, so the judge let me out on a low bond. I got out and I thought, I just beat him. I'm going to get away with this. I was not going to get away with it, but my delusions shifted from thinking people were reading my mind to delusions of invincibility. I thought I would always outsmart everyone and that no one could stop me. I decided to stay out of trouble until my trial, so I got 2 full-time jobs just to keep myself distracted. My plan was to stay squeaky clean. It did not last long. I got in fights at both jobs, but I didn't get in trouble. I hit a guy with a shovel at work and choked him until bloody foam came out of his mouth. We were friends. He just quit and never came back. I didn't get in trouble. The other place I was working was a department store. I kept stealing stuff and didn't get caught even though it was obvious. I would grab something to put in my bag and I would turn and wave whatever I was stealing at the security camera and stick it in my bag because by that time I just thought, I can't be caught. I'm invincible. Somewhere in all of this,
So, we got a couple of crimes that he committed post bail. Like one is rampant theft, and then the other might count as attempted murder.
Or at least felony assault. I mean, it's almost like, again, I mean, when I was reading up on, or I guess seeing a lot of the notes on this, it's like I was kind of reminded of like St. Augustine talking about, you just steal just to steal. Like he's not even like trying to fence the items he's selling and just like sell it on the black market. He's just doing it to do it.
Right.
And yeah. I didn't really realize that there's a lot of paranoia in his backstory, but you kind of just, very paranoid personality.
Yeah. So we're about to get to the party part. But that's the setup. Like this is the whole setup for, 15 and 13, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's the season of his life. He thinks he's invincible. He's being very transgressive for the sake of it. I mean, so far it's pretty coherent that the rest of it would follow. And obviously you had incompetence in the DA's office that let him off on bail for attempted murder.
Or it was a Soros attorney.
Hey, I thought that too.
We're all thinking it.
Went to some parties with random people I would meet even though I hated parties. People were annoying and disgusting. I went there to watch them act like idiots. Not sure you're familiar with these parties in the 1990s, but it would be a bunch of kids drinking beer and smoking weed and having sex. People had been giving me beer and weed since I was 6, but by the 90s, I had concluded that my brain was the greatest brain ever, and that I shouldn't pollute such perfection with beer or drugs. In those days, my morality, if you can call it that, consisted entirely of 1, do I feel like doing this? And 2, do I think I can get away with it? Whatever you have in your head that says, no, don't do that, that would be wrong, I was born without it. There were always girls who would fling themselves at the bad boy in the room, and I tended to be the bad boy. So yes, among other things, I had sex with a post-pubescent 13-year-old who, for some reason, was at a party, and a post-pubescent 15-year-old. And if I hadn't gotten locked up when I did, I would have done way worse than that. I mean, I used to sit around fantasizing about peeling people's skin off. Once I started fantasizing, it was only a matter of time. You know what's weird? When I remember things from the time I was out on bond, 1994, 1995, I see myself from the outside, but I don't have a face. And it's not just blank like Mr. Potato Head without any pieces added. It's like gray and copper colored thick liquid, almost like jello, and it's moving. Kind of creepy. Anyway, the last thing I was about to do before I went back to jail was burn someone's house down. There was some kid, I don't even remember what he did to tick me off. He jumped into a fight once when I was beating the crap out of his friend, but that didn't really bother me. He did something else I don't remember, but I decided to burn his house down. He still lived with his parents, so I found out where he lived. I made a Molotov cocktail. I was going to light it and throw it at his house in the middle of the night. Then I thought, well, they might wake up if they hear a Molotov smashing against their house. So I figured I'd do it more quietly. I bought a 5-gallon jug of gasoline, and I was experimenting by mixing it with oil to see what burned best. I was going to pour it all around his house and light it up and see who makes it out alive. And that's when I went to court and they found me guilty. It was really, really good for the world that I went back to jail when I did.
That right there. That's a testimony. I'm not huge on dramatic conversion stories. Like, that's not my thing personally. Not that they aren't good and bring glory to God, but there is a type of, we do see people like elevate those to unhealthy levels when throughout most people don't have that, and I don't want to denigrate the people that don't have a dramatic backstory. I think
That's actually better not to have a dramatic backstory. If we're
I think it brings
really honest.
I think it brings just as much glory to God to not have a dramatic backstory. And
yeah, I mean, to have on your gravestones, you were saved and walking with Jesus for 85 years, I think is pretty.
And that you came from a line of people who stayed in the faith.
Yeah.
Like, that's also something that brings glory to God. So that's something that we don't talk enough about. But, a lot of people do dramatic backstories. And then some people, not saying that David Wood is one of them, because I just don't know enough. But there are a lot of people, let's say Nala Ray or Blair White, who are using dramatic conversion stories for their own gain. There's a type of person that does that. So with that said, if we want to do a recap of all the crimes that he's committed. So we have, trying to kill his father. That is patricide. So he's not only violating, he not only tried to violate the 6th commandment, he definitely violated the 5th commandment. And we got to remember that the 10 commandments are in order. So trying to kill your father is perhaps the worst form of homicide that you can actually do. Other than maybe, spousal homicide. I think, those would be the 2 worst, right? Killing your parents, killing your spouse, probably the 2 worst. And then he tried to maybe attempted murder, but definitely some sort of felonious assault. And then rampant theft, statutory, 2 forms of statutory.
Which was not as bad as people were making out to be, because the context is, oh, you're at some weird high school party, you're living it up. I mean, obviously, the 90s, I assume this is the 90s or 2000s, where it's party MTV party culture, and obviously you have certain people that certainly shouldn't have been at that party that were at that party, and things happen.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, the reason why statutory is a crime is because the perception is that there's a dude who's taking advantage of someone who's younger, right? The idea that the younger person is being taken advantage of. Yeah, they're consenting, but they're being taken advantage of, right? And that they're definitely being, they're not old enough to know that what they're doing is really stupid, right? And that's what the law recognizes. So it's actually a form of fornication that is punishable under the law. But if he did not, but my read of the situation is if she didn't put out for him, it would have been someone else at that party.
Yeah, I mean, and also, let's be honest, if you repeatedly go to that scene, you repeatedly get into those sorts of incidences. I mean, a lot of people were making out to oh, he was some Arab immigrant.
He was just devouring some guy's, innocent daughter. Is kind of
luring a woman you're luring a child into an alley to run a train on them.
That's not exactly what it was.
That's not what happened. This was literally a party culture kind of thing.
Right.
And a 13-year-old was dragged into a party culture. Not sure who is really responsible for why a 13-year-old was in such a situation, but
odds are, Family Feud, show me a father figure, and there's a big X that comes on. I don't know if you've seen that meme, but that definitely comes up here. So that's something that matters, is like the context. Like, they're throwing themselves at him, and
or they're just all high and drunk and like.
No, he wasn't high or drunk,
Well,
but still.
Okay, yeah, because he said he didn't.
He's too good for that.
Which I mean, I wonder if his paranoia and his psychopathy comes from, like, he said he was
Weed.
exposed to a lot of weed at a young age, as young as 6, or alcohol as young as 6. So I guess early exposure to drugs, maybe that did that to him.
Yeah. So there's a lot. There's a lot there. But yeah, in context, what he did was bad. It was horrible, but that's not even the worst thing he said in this whole thing. That's not the worst crime that he committed.
I mean, I think even the felonious assault was worse, honestly.
Yeah. And then obviously the wanting to burn someone's house down, like arson, serious crime, I believe. That would have been also attempted homicide, if not successful, based on the intentions of what he said he wanted to do. So, of all the things, they latch on to the one thing that, according to feminists, that was the cancelable one.
And that is a huge problem in the cultures. Like, you can't come back from certain things like that, or Andrew Cuomo telling a woman to finish the sausage, which is kind of funny, honestly. But he can't come back from that and and win election for mayor of New York, or even Donald Trump with the the fingers. Like, you can't come, or you should be disqualified for that. It's just like, we got a society and a country to run. Then we can't necessarily have a very, I guess, gynocratic view of what you can or can't come back from.
Yeah, I think that's worth pointing out. Let's see.
Especially when that's not even the worst thing he committed in his long confession, and he did it while on bail for his actual crime.
Well, the most severe crime that he committed, which was, again, trying to kill his father with a hammer, which very brutal way to die. It didn't actually say... and then the thing is, he comes to Christ in prison. So let's actually play that part as well, and then we can kind of get into the controversy and the reporting on this, which I found issue with the reporting on this, just all over the place. But let's roll tape.
Saw my testimony video. You know what happened. They put me in another mental hospital because no one brought up my mental health history until after the trial. And when they found out after the trial, they weren't convinced that I was competent to stand trial. Went to a mental hospital for a while. I didn't tell them anything about delusional thoughts of people reading my mind or anything like that. So all they knew was the antisocial personality disorder part. And they don't keep psychopaths in mental hospitals. They keep them in prison. Went back to the jail, and I eventually ended up in a dorm with a guy who turned himself in for 21 felonies. My first role model as a Christian was a guy who spent years committing crimes, got away with everything, became a Christian, joined the Navy, talked to some counselor about feeling guilty for the things he had done, and he walked into a police station one day and started confessing. No one would have ever caught him. No one was looking for him. He just decided to be brutally honest. That one act of insane honesty cost him a lot, decades of his life in prison. But where would I be right now if God hadn't used that one act of faithfulness and trust in God to annoy me so much that I started studying Christianity just to show this guy what an idiot he was? After a few months of arguing with Randy, they put me in isolation because I thought I was trying to starve myself to death. But
what do you think this guy was in prison for? Like his cellmate? Because this is one of the things that people brought up. Why doesn't he confess, the statutory crime that he committed and serve the penalty for it? Like, people brought that up. It's like, you sure? What crime did this guy commit in his cellmate that he cost him decades of his life that he confessed to?
I feel like
still got decades of his life, right?
I feel like there would have had to have been something, like some form of evidence that he committed, because I don't necessarily know if you could just,
or it was a homicide,
something like that. Like, I don't think you could just walk into a police station and say, I wish to confess my crimes, and there's no evidence of the crimes that even were like you even committed the crimes or were even there at the day of. Like it's there's more to it than I confess for. Like I can't walk into a police station and say I confess for murder and then get charged with the murder. They'd still have to do their follow up. They'd still have to actually say, yeah, you committed this crime on this date.
Well, again, more serious the crime, the more willing they are to do that.
Yeah,
If he walks into a police station to confess to being seduced by a 13-year-old, that's not exactly going to, maybe that opens a case, but how far that case goes and whether
does he even
pursue
know
it,
the
use
name?
police resources and taxpayer money to pursue that case.
I mean, if it was a hookup, would he even know the name?
Yeah, another thing. So, and again, mental health background of this guy, they might say, we don't even know if this is true or not.
Yes. I mean, and again, that guy, obviously he said he was in the Navy, then he confessed. So if he did a stint in the Navy. So again, you're talking about decades for a crime that may or may not have statute of limitations. So it had to have been something really serious.
Yeah, most statute of limitations are 7 years.
That you could go back and verify.
7 years is like an average, but things like homicide don't have that. That's a little bit different if the moral calculation is what do you do after you're saved? Yeah, if you killed someone, yeah, obviously. Yeah, that's a much bigger deal. You were seduced by a 13-year-old? Yeah, that's bad. That's really bad.
I mean, again, I don't necessarily think he should turn himself in for a crime that was more or less bad, but not like the worst thing in the world. And honestly,
not the worst crime.
It's not really.
He already did time.
It's not really. Yeah, he already did time. It's not really worth. It's not really in the interest of justice to pursue it.
Yeah, and another thing, she didn't go to the police, so there's that.
No victim has come forth. I mean, she didn't go to the police. Again, I don't even think Robert Morris should be in jail, if we're going to be really honest, on like bogus cowboy laws.
No, I like the cowboy laws.
I mean, it's funny. It's, kind of comical, but I don't necessarily think it's in the interest of justice.
Yeah, that whole thing is like everyone cares more about her victimhood, the Cindy Crawford, whatever, Clemenshire. Yeah, not Crawford. That's someone else from the 80s. Than she did, because she wasn't willing to go to the police. And no one around them was willing to go to the police. Very sad situation. All right, let's...
I kept reading about a man who had an interesting habit of taking the most screwed up people on the planet and turning them into something else. Just so you know that God is the same yesterday and today and forever, here's Mark 5. They went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day, among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit."
So basically the point that he's going to make is that he had the unclean spirit. He had a conversion experience that was dramatic, and that's kind of the point that he makes. And then ultimately he ends the video by saying he's going to use this in his debates against Islam because they went after him with all these premises that would indict Muhammad. So
he basically turned his sin as an apology. I mean, I guess that's a strategy.
It's a very bold strategy for.
Hey, I admit what I did. You're saying what I did was wrong. I admit what I did was wrong, but you don't think it's wrong that Muhammad did it, and he did.
Yeah, Muhammad did the same.
Yeah, actually, he was single digits too, not even.
Right. So it's kind of funny as the Julie Roy's reporting on this, and I didn't really like the Protestia reporting on it. I don't know if David Morrell wrote it at Protestia, but Protestia did an article on it, and they didn't mention that he was 18 when these events happened, which, again, if you're going to write a story about a statutory case, you should mention the age of both parties, because that is a relevant detail, which I don't think Protestia did in their reporting. But this is from an excerpt from a Julie Roy's article where Julie Roy's claimed that he spoke gleefully about his past criminal acts, boasting openly to his audience. He did not seem to express remorse, but rather seemed to take pride in his admissions. And would go on to say Christian apologist David Wood, known for his large platform and prison conversion, shocked viewers when he openly confessed during a recent live stream that he raped 2 girls aged 13 and 15 prior to his conversion. He described the acts as disturbing detail without any seeming remorse. So,
I mean, to be
that
fair,
is some terrible reporting out of Julie Royce.
I mean, if we're going to be really fair, he didn't actually get into disturbing detail. I mean, obviously the whole story is kind of disturbing, but it's not like he was like really getting into the details.
Well, he gets a little bit more graphic, I think, at the end when he talks about budding breasts and stuff like that to draw the line at different stages of puberty. To point out, that the 72 versions of Islam is, their children. So he talks about that, like, and he goes pretty hard at the end, right? But the reporting on this, here's the thing. This is sin that happened before his profession of faith. I don't think it should be held against him. I don't think we should be canceling David Wood for what he did before he came to Christ. Is that fair? Like, am I out of bounds here?
I mean, we're going really soft on the Catholic guy that, was in a sexting scandal. We're also going very soft on the black guy that left his marriage. And,
Yeah, Chris K-Dub, abandoning his wife or whatever.
Because he's back on YouTube. He's still doing videos and looks like his audience is still with him. So,
and I don't like the term permanently disqualified because it's not really a biblical concept. For most things, if you committed a certain crime that would make you permanently disqualified, you should actually be permanently deleted, right? Like, that's kind of how it should work. You kill a person, you grape a person, like, deletion, right? Ended. This, again, pre-conversion fornication, if we're going by the, what the Bible says about it. And meanwhile, pre-conversion, attempted murder, attempted patricide, worst thing he did, right? If we're going pre-conversion, I don't see how this cancels someone from, Christian ministry post-conversion. Now, there is one thing. If you are on a registry, you probably shouldn't be a pastor because you do not have a good reputation with the outside because you're on a registry from the outside. So you can't possibly have that good relationship. I don't think you could meet those. I don't think you can meet that specific qualification for being a pastor. If you're someone that's a rehabilitated criminal, it's a little bit different. And you're not on a permanent registry, you just don't have the right to vote or serve on jury duties. So, but I think there's a standard here, right?
So it's not even, he doesn't even need to meet the standard, even though obviously him doing a public ministry making content on YouTube certainly would mean he ought to be able to hold to the pastoral standard.
And this last part is pretty funny because apparently Julie Roy's reached out to him for an interview after, calling him a rapist, wanted an interview.
Like, I mean, that just sounds like a struggle session.
Man, I'll say it. The ball's on her because, she is kind of a dyke anyway. And
she had a sexual, she literally had a sexual encounter, or a sexual fantasy,
parasexual,
right? Sexual ideations about a lesbian sexual ideations with a teenage girl.
She literally was grooming a teenage girl,
which would
that's Julie Royce's background.
Which would be far worse. Which is far worse
in the church in a ministry position.
Far worse than anything he did. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, 13, 15 doesn't matter. What she was doing was worse.
Like
And
Julie
that's
Roy's biggest hypocrite in Christian media. She might be the biggest hypocrite in Christian journalism. Well, obviously Christian journalism, but the fact that she's a groomer, but anytime a man does anything, breathes the wrong way towards a woman, she labels that person and goes after them. But her past, in her own book that no one read until a couple years later, she admitted to grooming a person under her ministry care. So by her standards, she should be canceled, run out of town. And she did not face any real consequences about
still
that.
has not. I mean, if anything, you could say her platform has kind of grown. It has a lot of corporate, I won't say corporate sponsorship, but it certainly does have a lot of, like, let's just say establishment prestige.
Yeah.
She has multiple people that write under her name.
She also pays she has the clout to pay for the RNS syndication.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, her platform has actually grown despite having a far worse scandal than David Wood.
So, yeah, that type of reaction I think is sickening. And David Wood, I don't know if he's like I don't know how good he is. I just don't. I don't watch Christian apologetic channels. I never got into the James White. My experience with James White is mostly him wanting to spank me, and then thereafter reactions and stuff like that, right? So that's.
I mean, I think my first foray watching James White's actual show was him basically saying John Calvin was a Gnostic, because Stephen Wolf alludes to John Calvin's interpretation of Second Peter, I believe, or First Peter 2, something like that. And because James Lindsay called Stephen Wolf a Gnostic for quoting Calvin, that means James White, agrees with James Lindsay and is calling Calvin a Gnostic. So, despite being part of the Reformed tradition.
Yeah, actually, I think it was a crusade thing, but obviously, the start of Woke Wars 2.
Or maybe
James
it
White.
had to do with the whole presuppositional apologetics debate, which makes you want to bang your head into a wall with how dumb it is.
Yeah, it's the dumbest debate. The dumbest. Like, I can't think of a dumber debate in Christianity than presuppositional apologetics versus natural law apologetics. Like, it's good to know both. Cool. Use them when you need them. But I'm not into philosophy. I'm just not. Because philosophy should be subjected to other things like theology, history, second. So history should outrank philosophy. That's actually pretty controversial for a lot of philosophy bros out there. But yes, I think history, you should subordinate your philosophy views to what has happened in history. And then I know I have something in between history and philosophy, but political science, I guess, like your politics should supersede your philosophy as well. Because, my politics, I want what's good and whatever. I'll come up with a philosophy later. But stuff like that. Like, I'm not going to go build a worldview on Ayn Rand and then format my politics based on that, It should go the other way around. You format your politics and then, okay, you can evaluate what Rand has to say, right? Anyway, that is, I don't know how much more I have to say about that tonight. I can do a last call for questions, but anyway, see what the people want to know. But I think it's an overblown scandal.
Yeah, I try to keep it fair. I mean, obviously, there's a similar scandal with Joel Webben that was like, I guess, an open secret with those that were like in the know, or certainly those that were ministry partners with them. So it wasn't like it was a secret sin in the closet for 10 years. Obviously, you also have, the whole Lawson deal, but
yeah, but that was a thing that just ended because he got caught.
Yeah, but So I mean, yeah, you have actual secret sins. You have other sins that aren't really like publicly known, but they were known. So I mean, of all the thing, I mean, there's seems to be a push to like, no, it's just weird. But I mean, this one was like, it's bad, sure, yeah, but it's not even the worst thing he did. It's like he was on a bender of doing evil things, and that was just one of the things he did.
Or two of them, but
Yeah.
yes.
I'm sure there's a bunch of like rehab stories that, people doing hide and doing weird crimes while on drugs because they're addicts. And again, then they come to Christ and so forth. So,
I mean, it does show, glory of God, that he could take someone like David Wood before conversion and change that. So we got to remember that. And there's a lot of people who the crab pot mentality, they just want to bring people down. They don't
I mean,
want people to break out of containment. They just want to bring people down.
I mean, he was functionally Alex from Clockwork Orange.
So, all right, I don't see any questions. I see, did David Wood convert to Judaism? I know he's cringe on that issue, but I don't know how bad.
See, we're willing to overlook, some of the worst elements.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We actually do treat a lot of people graciously around here. Like even, Doug Wilson, who's a little bit less than gracious towards people that he goes after these days, if they're to his right. And, because there's a lot of things you could attack Doug Wilson for that I don't, for obvious reasons. And David Wood, it's like, okay, even though he might be cringe on the Israel question or whatever, which, the comment sections that I've had say so, and there's still something about, hey, we still have a Bible to follow in terms of standards go, and in terms of recognizing what propitiation of sin means, and that, the work of Jesus on the cross. So these are all things to keep in mind. I think that's all I got for tonight. My name is Ray. This is Anthony. If you like this content, do also subscribe to the channel podcast if you're new. We also have a free newsletter. We have a Patreon-like system, evangelicaldarkweb.org/join. That's all linked in the description below. But like I said, least you can do, like, follow with those magical YouTube algorithms, and have a blessed day. Stay based. Christ is King, and we will catch you on the next one in December, I believe.